Hello, everybody that logged in on time. This is Joe Matthews from Franchise Performance Group, and part of our today we're going to be talking about franchise broker best practices, and we have my esteemed colleague who I've known pretty much my entire franchising career, Leslie Cuban. You want to say hi?
Hey, everybody. Good to see you all again. Excited to be a part of the talk today. Thanks, Joe.
So today we're going to be talking about franchise broker best practices, or how to get your brand in the short list of the franchise broker chain, so you get to work with esteemed people like esteemed colleague Leslie Cuban. And I'm using the word esteem a lot because I can't think of another word to substitute. So we'll just move on, and I will try to find another word.
Distinguished.
Distinguished. Well played.
I like it all. I'll take it all.
So, Leslie, why don't you talk a little bit about what distinguishes you as a franchise broker or a franchise consultant?
Sure. Well, I think that something that may have to do with it is just time in the trenches. This February marked my 25-year anniversary of being a franchise broker, all the time with the FranNet organization. Gosh, Joe, I think I was, I don't know, 10, 12 years old when we met, when my dad had me hawking Moto photo brochures at a franchise show, and you guys were there. So
yeah, we used to get Leslie. I used to share a booth when Leslie, I think you were in high school actually, and you would be stuffing brochures for your dad, and we'd be the next booth over. Yeah.
Yep. So I've kind of
whole life. Yeah.
Been around this franchising thing for as a broker, but even before that, quite a long time. So
well done. So Leslie, you're with FranNet, and just so everybody knows, you're within the top 5 of their chain on a pretty consistent basis, right?
I'm usually in the top 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a real rock star, distinguished, and what was the other one? Elite? Can't remember. Okay. But we'll go on with, and we'll move on and talk about the content. First of all, let's talk about what a franchise broker is if you're new to franchise development. So when we talk about franchise broker, on the most basic terms, it's a paid performance lead generation for franchisors. Now, if you read a broker contract, they're materially the same. Yeah, they're paid on making an introduction. And if that introduction turns into a deal, they're paid on performance. Now, that's not how Leslie operates. So Leslie's more than just distributing contact information. So Leslie would be on the high end of the value add as it relates to franchise brokers. So Leslie, if you can maybe talk about what you do when you submit a lead as a value add that sets you apart and gets you into the top 1 or 2 of that particular chain, which I would say is the top 1 or 2 of the whole broker networks.
Thank you. So by the time I'm referring a candidate to a brand, I've already spent a lot of time with that candidate, and they've been through kind of a few layers of qualification. I've had an intro call. They have completed we use an assessment tool. A number of the broker networks, use a similar tool where we're collecting financial information about, in their own words, what's important to them, what they're looking for in a business, what they don't want. Then, I also provide, detailed notes beyond just what is in the profile about the conversations that I'm having with the candidate. Just, background, history, anything that's relevant, background, family stuff, career stuff, income, net worth, what their pain points are, what their priorities seem to be in this, what preferences they believe that they have. So, I'm providing a package of paperwork to brands, and I've provided education to the client. They've been through, a couple of series of videos that I send them, preparing them for the franchise evaluation process on what's a what's an FDD. We talk through all about that. So these terms are not new to the candidate when they get to the franchisor. So I mean, I've had 2 to 3 meetings, education and qualification paperwork. That has all happened before the franchisor touches the lead.
So you can see, based if a lead comes from Leslie or somebody who does business the way Leslie does business, this is not a cold lead, right? So it would have been very well vetted. It would have been pre-qualified. She's actually doing the front end work to make sure they're actually ready from an emotional and financial standpoint, largely to get involved in franchising. So not a top of the funnel kind of lead, because Leslie values her time, which is how she gets into the an individual producer model. That's how you stay in the top too. So by the time you get a lead, they're not only educated on self-employment, vetted, screened, they're also vetted on your concept. So one of the things Leslie didn't say, which I can validate, is she's excellent at matching. So she has more than a cursory knowledge of concepts that are on her short list, and make sure that's a pretty solid match going in. And that's how the paid per performance works, right? So the broker fees are a little higher, but they close at a higher rate, right? So a lead that Leslie send might close at 5%. The channel, or better, the channel might close somewhere between 2 and 5%, where digital marketing might close at 1%, to give you an idea of how you allocate your human capital.
If we're talking about close rates, I can, every person's close rate is different, but mine is consistently by the time I'm sending someone to the franchisor, there's a whole bunch of people that I've disqualified before they get to the referral to the franchisor.
Right.
When we get to that level, the close ratio is about between 1 and 3 and 1 and 4.
That's fantastic. So that's pretty unique to you, Leslie, or maybe it's not unique to FranNet. So it's high for the channel, but that's excellent that you're doing that. So basically, your close rate is what a franchisor would experience from application to close, as opposed to lead to close. So that's outstanding. Get into the fee structure. Somebody like Leslie would be inclined to do some of the bigger deals, 3 to 5 packs. Let's say we're on a single deal, you can expect, $25,000 to $30,000 is typical for the channel, the broker channel. To get anything less, you're not on the radar screen, and people get bid up from there. But I find the good brokers are not necessarily commission. Really doesn't play into effect. Match does, but if the commission isn't at least 25,000, I find you're not going to get shown. Once you get into multi-territory, expect that incentive to be over 50,000 plus, which would work out as a percentage of revenue generated on the low side of 40%. And there are franchisors that I know pay the entire franchise fee and territory development fees to the brokers as incentives. Okay. Any questions on fees, or any questions for Leslie as far as cursory high level, what it's like to work with a consultant? Just come out of, is everybody off of mute, Jason?
They have to take themselves off, but they have the ability to.
Perfect. Well, I'll just plow forward then. Okay. The only other thing I want to do is I want to distinguish an FSO, which is an outsourced franchise sales organization, from a franchise broker. So an FSO would actually work the lead that Leslie tees up. So they're not in competition. They're not the same channel. So we have an FSO. So we're actually representing the brand, where Leslie might be more representing the candidate. Leslie, you want to talk about how you work with FSOs at a high level?
Yeah, I mean, it went from barely existing to be a heavily influential force within brokers. I think, a growing percentage of deals that we do, an FSO is involved. And, that can, Joe, you and I talked a little bit about this, that, that can be like if a brand is coming to me through my, one of my favorite FSOs, the barrier for me to start working with that is much, much lower because I already have trust in their ability to vet brands. I know what their process is. I know exactly what I'm going to get. So it eliminates, a lot of the unknowns and friction. And not all just like not all brokers are equal, not all FSOs are equal. But, when there is a relationship there, when the brand is coming through the FSO, it can eliminate some of the barriers to that brand getting traction with us.
Very good. Thank you. So there's a lot you said there, and I'm going to peel it back from the franchisor's perspective. So what Leslie's saying, or another way to say what Leslie's saying is the FSOs and franchise salespeople, I'll put them both, they have to have, they build their own brand within the franchise broker community, right? So while they're doing business with your brand, Leslie made a point to say she wants to eliminate the unknowns. Well, what does that actually mean? The big unknown is, can the recruiter get a deal done, right? So so the FSOs would have already established a track record within the broker community. Not only just have, when Leslie's talking about relationship, not just personal relationship, like let's throw back a gin and tonic after hours. It's the relationship is, what are you doing on behalf of the client? What's the integrity level by which you're operating? How are you presenting? What process are you putting in? And then at the end of the day, her income is 100% tied to the production level of what the franchisor or the FSO is doing with the lead. So I will tell you that if a franchise salesperson doesn't have those relationships or hasn't already built their brand within their personal brand within the franchise broker community, it's harder to get on the short list. Or that, that's a lot of reasons why the franchise brands go with FSOs, because there's a halo effect, is what you heard, between the brand that the FSO is already built within the broker community, okay, and then the franchisor brand they can tuck in. And that has a lot of value to the franchise broker community. Why? Because it eliminates a lot of the unknowns that Leslie talks about. Thank you, Leslie. Very good feedback. Questions on that? Because I think that's important. Comments? Then we shan move on. Okay. Now here's where Leslie might have some issues with me, right? So Leslie, I'm going to give you the rule, and then you talk about the exception, okay? Because as a general rule, because I own a digital agency, so we do lead generation strategy and budgeting for franchisors also on top of being an FSO. So when I'm working with a franchisor, I like to do the lower cost deals first, right? So I'm a big proponent of, let's explore Google and Facebook first. Now that may or may not generate enough deal flow to hit the objective. And then I tuck in my relationship with the franchise brokers to work with and work side and side with the paid spend or the digital spend. Now, there's certain brands that I would actually mix this up for. For instance, home service brands have very low search volume on Google. So we're more reliant on that category to close deals through the broker networks. So Leslie, why don't you talk about what kind of brands, okay, would be on your short list? So we talked about what kind of people working the lead would be on the short list, but what kind of franchisors would make it to your short list?
Do you mean by industry or some other means of?
However you determine what you're going to show. So,
okay.
So one criteria was who's presenting it, right?
Yeah.
What's your other criteria?
So, it's important that we always have a mix of we have a lot of diversity in our portfolio because it's different strokes for different folks. So,
and when you talk about diversity, you're not talking like DEI inclusion kind of diversity.
I'm talking about diversity of industry, diversity of, is it business services? Is it home services? Is it, fitness or beauty or pet care? We need to have a mix of businesses that can be run semi-actively. I hate, you're never going to hear me say semi-passive, semi-absentee. but I will say semi-active because we still,
Distinguish semi-active versus semi-absentee.
well, it doesn't have the word passive or absentee in it. It's like, you got to be active in it. It doesn't mean you need to be active in it and on site 40, 50 hours a week, but you got to be active in running your business, even if you're maintaining your full-time job. And so, we do have, it's vacillated over time. Like when layoffs are high and people aren't readily able to get, jobs, some of the service businesses like in home services or business services tend to get more action from us. But when employment is high, these multi-unit models, that you're going to hire, on-site management from day one. We need to have all of that because we do have different needs amongst our candidates that we're working with. I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah. So here's, I'm going to put a bow on it. So here's what Leslie's saying, right? So I'm going to add to what you're saying. So Leslie's like, if you cut open her head, she would say people don't want a franchise. They want the end game. They want the result, right? Okay. And then they've got assets that they're applying against the result. So what part of the assets is capital? Part of the assets is transferable skills and experience. Then there's pain points and things they like to do, like dislikes, but most importantly, time. Time is a non-renewable resource, right? So Leslie's looking at her client saying, okay, if taking all of these, what's the best fit? Now notice she's not hung up on category, right? It's not hung up on like fitness or not hung up on pets, right? Yeah, there may be somebody who's only looking at pet business, but they can go to a franchise portal or Google and find that pet business on their own. They don't need somebody like Leslie. So Leslie, is it fair to say they go to you more looking for what they don't know, right? And they don't know that they don't know, and more focused on the end game, right?
Yeah, the perfect broker client is someone who's qualified, in all the various ways, and they're raising their hand saying, I'd really like to own my own business because it's going to make my life better in these ways. But I don't know what's out there in franchising. And they're looking for, if they already knew what they wanted and what would be a good fit, then they don't need me.
Very good, right?
So they want ideas that make sense for them that they would never probably identify by themselves.
Very good. So put that in franchisor terms, they're leads you wouldn't have got on your own as a typical, because for whatever reason, your opportunity doesn't fit their preconceived notions of what an opportunity is supposed to look like. So you don't get on the radar screen. Now, what Leslie does is she expands or debunks some of these preconceived notions as part of her value add, right? And then puts your brand on the short list and gets them to have a conversation where you can tell your brand story. And that's real high value. So one of the things that work with a broker network, it's all additional incremental growth because it's not leads you probably would have gotten organically or through paid advertising. So thank you, Leslie, for that. Yeah. Now the paid advertising, like when we're working with a franchisor, put in perspective, we're doing deals probably between $8,000 to say on the high end, maybe $15,000 in ad spend to find a franchisee. Leslie would be started at 25 to 30 grand. So just to kind of put it in perspective. But the broker networks generate a lot of massive volume because if you get on Leslie's radar screen, you're not just on Leslie's radar screen. She's an influencer throughout FranNet and probably other broker networks groups too. So you can build your brand quickly within the broker community, getting somebody like Leslie's attention. All right. So Leslie, maybe you can help me with this too. I'll start with kind of like when I'm working with a brand and I'm sitting down with a CEO talking about broker networks and who we find, and maybe you could put a little color on this. But definitely my first cut is if we can't generate search volume on Google. I'm going to the broker networks. If we can have a unique niche business, like I'm with a client right now, it's I don't know if you can tell, Alloy Wheels. It is a brilliant business model. All they do is fix alloy wheels of expensive cars. So they work with auto dealerships and body shops and used car places. Like I was at CarMax this morning, watching them recondition the wheels of the vehicles that are going to go up for sale. Now, that's not something somebody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what I really want to do? I want to recondition wheels for a living. But an owner operator might do $200,000 in sales and net 125 grand in this particular. It's a great owner operator model, right? It's a 100% return on investment. That's something that would go real well with the brokers because it's not something that even looks like a real opportunity, right? If they fixed a road rash on wheels, like how would that be an opportunity? So I'll call that a niche business. A broker community does great with niche businesses. Also businesses with a narrow qualifications. Like we represent Sandler, and half our deal flow or more is with the broker networks. If those of you don't know, Sandler is sales training. So they need experienced sales executives only, right? So director level, national director, VP level, chief revenue officer. So somebody like that, I'd go to Leslie with this is who we're looking for. Okay. And then when she finds candidates that fit that bill, we're more likely to get that as a showing, which is harder to advertise for because it's so narrow. Emerging growth brands is another one. For those that you don't know, like FranConnect publishes franchise sales index every year. And every year they show that most of the deal flow, like 80% or more, goes to chains of 100 franchisees or 100 territories or units or more. So if you're an emerging growth brand that's under that, you're already not on the radar screen of the broader franchise buyer, right? They like bigger concepts because they equate that with lower risk. And then if you want to do more than 20 deals a year, you're looking for massive acceleration. Then you can't really get around incorporating the broker networks unless like we work with Pliables. We're doing 3 to 4 deals a month with Pliables, and almost all of it's organic, right? So it's just they have a cult following, and it just generates all kind of organic interest. But they're an outlier as it relates to that. So Leslie, what else? Like what other type of concepts or life cycles or what would make an ideal franchise broker candidate? As a brand.
I had a colleague say once, we sell the ugly babies. And I think it's kind of, and that would be, and what he was referring to was like home cleaning, nobody, and dry cleaning. I mean, nobody wakes up and says, if today is my lucky day, I'm going to own a Molly Maid franchise. Right. So,
and if you do, you're a weirdo.
Yeah. So, I would say, I'm kind of thinking through this, and it's something that you haven't covered here. I mean, we've done over the years, we've done, tons of deals with companies like Great Clips. Yes. And, Waxing the City was one of our top client choices in the last couple of years. Physical therapy and balance centers, we've done a ton of deals with. And I'd say there's a couple of things those have in common. They're modestly cost, multi-unit, you hire a manager day one. We do really well with those kind of models that are not food. Like food by and large, there are exceptions, but they're not, your run-of-the-mill food stuff. So
yeah, I find the broker network is probably not a good channel for food unless it's a non-cooking chain. Like we did well with Menchie's, right? With we took Menchie's to market 25 units and built it to 500 largely through the broker, more than half through the broker.
Yeah. But what else? Think about what those brands have in common. It kind of dials into what you said before. There's some education and perception addressing, because a lot of people will think, well, I don't know how to cut hair. I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a waxer. So how could I own that?
You know, it's interesting, Leslie. Sport Clips is one of our clients. We helped them go from 375 to 1100. And the guy I had on it was bald, right? So, you know, Paul Pichel, you would know Paul Pichel. He's their number one recruiter. And that's like, if you know, a lot of it would be, you know, older gentlemen, right, who haven't been to a barber, you know, in 10 or 15 years because they lost all their hair already. Like, why would hair care even be on their radar screen? And if they're if they're white collar professionals, why would they, you know, want to manage, you know, stylists? Except that's the model, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And they have systems and processes for that. And somebody like Leslie could actually debunk that, right? Based on what you told me, you should look at hair care. And when they're done gasping, she could say, "Now let me defend that recommendation," right?
Yeah.
And then talk all the things that hair care, like recession resistance, like recurring revenue, like high margins, right? Like stability, and et cetera, and so on. So very good, Leslie. And then when you say, I think you used the word modest or something like that as a relative to investment. Could you give parameters? Like, give me the kind of low to high. That
Like,
might be the sweet spot.
you know, kind of on the lower cost end, you know, things like Sandler or WSI, you know, that would
$100,000 investment.
around 80 to 100 is probably on the low end. Then, you know, when we look at the multi-unit stuff, I mean, there are exceptions where we're getting into higher expense, but by and large, you know, the kind of footprint, you know, again, think about a Sport Clips or Great Clips or Waxing the City, you know, it's around, you know, $450,000 to $500,000 per
location. Yes.
location. And we do have, you know, some success with higher priced investments. But, you know, I mean, what I've kind of explained is really tends to be in our sweet spots.
Perfect. So let's call it 100 to 500, and then there's outliers.
Yeah.
Good, Leslie. Thank you. Now, I will tell you, not every broker chain is created equal. So what I tried to do is rack and stack, like kind of what our kind of go-to looks like. Like if we want to do massive deal flow, the most experienced and the highest volume franchise consultants or brokers are FranNet Franchise. So that those two brands have set themselves apart within the industry. Now, with that, I will tell you, because they do high volume, they're also in high demand, which also makes it harder to get on the short list. So sometimes I'll come in underneath that and I'll look at the lower tier franchise broker networks, and that doesn't mean they're not reputable. That doesn't mean they don't do volume. They just don't do the volume of FranNet Franchise. So to put an example would be, if it was real estate, you know, we worked with Realty Executive for many years. So Realty Executive agents would average 13 deals a year. RE/MAX would average 16. Nobody else, none of the other brands average more than 3 deals a year in residential real estate. There's a franchise broker corollary, I think, right? So it doesn't mean that not deals getting done. They're just there's fewer deals per consultant, that they just might have more consultants, right? So you've got the Entrepreneur Source. I like Entrepreneur Source for owner-operator type models or more moderately priced. So yeah, I wouldn't look at them for 500 or more. That 100 to 300 band, 100 to 400 band, owner-operator kind of model. Leslie's working with, she's not going to tell you, she works with very sophisticated senior executive type persons. You don't see that as much with the Entrepreneur Source. They might be more director level kind of people. FranServe and eSource, I kind of put in the same category. IFPG, you're dealing massive amount of franchise brokers. They've got the most franchise brokers by sheer volume, but it's easier to build your brand with eSource and FranServe because they talk. I find the IFPG consultants operate kind of in silos. So you could do a bunch of deals with one consultant, but that doesn't necessarily your brand is building across the brand like it would with FranNet, Franchise, and eSource, and even FranServe. And then BAI, I would put BAI in the same category of FranServe, eSource, I would say they're probably doing less volume, but they had a recent change in leadership. So it's probably one of the brands to watch. And then also, if I was an emerging growth franchisor, like Leslie will tell you, she wants to know franchise validation's intact or she's not showing it, right? And she needs to hear more than 7 franchisees to get consistency of validation. So if you're a chain of under 25 units, you're not probably getting Leslie's attention unless the unit level economics are so insane, or there's so many corporate outlets that out there already that there's proof of concept. But if you get 25 units or more, you'll probably get more play with these other concepts than you would with FranNet or FranChoice. Do you think that's a fair assessment, Leslie, or is that a bad characterization?
So, I mean, it's close, but we definitely work with young emerging brands, but there has to be, there's got to be something there. I mean, there's got to be, a level of validation that our clients can do.
So that could be item 19 then, right? So they'd have to have an robust item 19.
It could, but I just don't see
validations. Talk to me.
I don't have a lot of, again, I'm working with business people that, this is not a passion play. Like they want to see numbers. And so there has to be some amount of information, the item 19. Yes. And also, I mean, it doesn't have to be a ton. Like we work with plenty of brands that, have, 20, 15, 20 I'm good with 15 or 20 franchisees. If the validation is good, I'm fine with that.
Perfect. Okay. And then when Leslie's talking about fewer units, it's kind of like risk and reward, right? So the smaller the chain, the higher the risk, at least to the buyer. So what do you offset risk with? Reward, right? So as long as if it's a smaller chain, that's okay. What's not okay is weak unit level economics combined with a smaller chain, combined with that it's a copycat concept and it's got no real defensible position in the marketplace or no unique value proposition to the consumer. Like, why show that, right? So thank you, Leslie, for that also. So Leslie, why don't you talk about, now you're the brand, like let's say I'm a brand, the CEO or the VP of real estate, or VP of development. I'm tasked with creating a breakthrough in FranDev. I'm in that 100 to 500,000 investment, 20 units or more with franchisees. The validation's good. Ramp ups are pretty consistent. ROI is good. More than 80% of the franchisees, when they're asked, hey, knowing what you know now, would you make the same investment again? They say yes. Okay. Now I'm reaching out to the broker networks. How do I get on the short list? Well, I got a high value brand, but it doesn't mean I'm on the short list. What do I need?
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, even with all of that, it's because, I mean, we are bombarded every single day by the brands in our inventory, brands not in our inventory. I mean, it's 100+ emails every day from franchisors. And so, if there's not already an existing relationship, like with an FSO or franchise developers that we know, that kind of reduces that friction. I mean, I'm not going to return the phone call from some franchisor that I've never heard of and that I don't know anything about. It's like, hey, can I talk to you about my brand? Like, that's just, I don't have, that's not to be rude. It's just that I literally, there isn't enough time in the day.
Right.
That. So, I'm busy generating leads and working with prospects. Like my time is best spent doing what you're paying us to do for you.
Right.
So the way to do what I will pay attention to is you have to make it, it goes back to the validation thing, Joe, that we just spoke about. I want to see short videos of your franchise owners, not your franchise salespeople, not you. I want to see some proof of validation from franchisees. So, and the best way to do that, I delete many emails from franchisors every day, and I'm not reading them. But if I can see that there's a short video that gets to the punchline of this is why I own this business. And the franchisees look like the kind of prospects I work with.
Yes.
So, their experience level, their, financial situation, if they look like who I know I work with well, then that gets my attention. And they're saying how their life is all the better because they own your franchise.
So that's good. So I want to, there's what you say, then there's what people hear. So I want to frame the listening a little bit, Leslie, on this. So when you're talking about videos, right, you're not talking about so some people here, now I got to get a film crew and I got to send them around the country and I got to develop these videos, right? That's not what you're talking about, is it?
It could be. I mean, I think that's worth the investment.
Yes.
But no, it doesn't have to be that. It can be, there's value. I do this in my own marketing. Just get out your smartphone but I need proof quickly that the value proposition is there, the money-making opportunity is there, and I need to hear it from your franchisees, not you.
So they're very good. So I'm going to go back to production value, somebody that does video, right? So it needs to be credible, right? So Leslie talks about proof, right? And I'll tell you, if you overproduce a video, it doesn't look credible. If it looks too slick and too salesy, it's not as credible with somebody with like Leslie, and it's not as credible with the franchise candidate. For franchisee testimonial videos, I'll just tell you what we do is we have 6 or 7 questions that we send to the franchisee. We could have they could actually record themselves on a laptop. We show them how to do the lighting, and then we do basic edits. And it looks great. It sounds great. It looks like a documentary style. It's very low editing. So in a franchisee testimony video, it's okay if they pull on their eyebrows. It actually makes them look real. It's okay if they rub their chin or shake their hands a little bit, because that makes it look credible. But what they're saying has to be consistent with what Leslie's listening for, right? Which is knowing what you know now. Would you make the same decision again? Do you have the relevant background? Do you have the relevant experience? Do you have? And then Leslie's going to say, well, how does that compare to the people that she regularly works with? Am I missing anything on that, Leslie?
Yes. And I'm thinking through this that, if there's no franchisees or almost next to nothing in terms of franchisee validation, and it's another home cleaning concept or another fitness center or just, another, and I have 5 of those in my inventory already, I'm not gonna work with that brand. But if it's something unique, like if it's something different, and this may or may not be good, but and I include myself in this, but brokers are, we like the shiny new toy. You have a run, and I think we're going to talk about this. You're going to have a run, and then you're not going to get the same volume that you did in the first year or 2 with brokers. So, we're always on the hunt for something new and different as territory, and we need to, because prime territories get sold out in the markets where we're working with people. So I will say an exception to it is if it's something, it's not another Me Too, there's something really unique and attractive and sexy about it, then, even in lack of validation, I will look at it.
And I'm going to add to the list. I'm going to speak for you if I can for a second, Leslie, and then you could correct me if I'm wrong. But unique, valuable to the customer, profitable, so good ROI for the constituent, which would be the franchise candidate, sustainable for the long haul. That's why Leslie was poo-pooing a little bit of fitness concepts, because they come out because there's fitness fad or craze. They tie the craze to the brand. I'll call it like hot yoga, for instance. Okay. And then when people stop doing hot yoga, there's no brand, right? So it's sustainability for the long haul too, right? It can't be fad related, or you just don't get the long-term returns. But you want to hear what she said very clearly. Don't show me any copycats. Show me something with real value and genius in the marketplace that's different than what she already has, or you don't have my attention. Like sometimes in home healthcare, I would ask somebody like, how is this different? They say, we have all this available territory.
Yeah.
Well, my answer is so what? Yeah. So here's what I heard. Show my business because we're smaller, we're less capitalized, we have fewer franchisees, and we're a Me Too concept that other franchisors have already accelerated past. Oh, that's a valuable investment. So think in terms of how a broker and how a candidate's going to hear it.
Hey, Joe, one thing I would add is I haven't heard the word leadership, but that's a very important quality in a brand coming in at Broker Network. The leadership of the team. Like there's a new brand, Belfour's got it. So, it's a very easy pivot to say, yeah, they only have one, but they're owned by Belfour,
Yeah, so you're going to see more and more platform players, like Belfour, like Princeton, Capital, that are going to start going more downstream to get more deal flow because they have to deploy their capital. And then you're really betting on the experience of leadership or management.
Yeah, and even brands that aren't affiliated with large groups, the people who own it, operate, or the founders, powerful in getting broker networks to present the brand.
Yeah,
really good.
I think that's true. Especially, we've worked with very young brands, but the folks behind them have had great success in other franchising endeavors. That is a value point that we can communicate to our clients.
Yeah, and then that's good value. And then the other thing is they would have built their value or their individual brands within the broker community already, right? So that goes back to the person running point is every bit as valuable as the brand to get franchise broker attention. Thank you very much, Carl, for that comment. That's good. Had I shown more leadership, I might have brought up leadership. So fish stinks from the head. I take responsibility. Leslie, now the lead's generated. Let's talk about what happens after the fact. How much communication do you want coming back to you from the franchisor or the FSO?
So some are really good with some automated stuff that let us know that the call was had. This is where you see a wide spectrum and quality across franchisors and FSOs. And frankly, at the end of the day, I don't care. Like, I just want the information. I want to know that you connected with the candidate. And I'd like some commentary from the FSO or the brand of, well, how did the call go? Like, how was it left? Do you have another meeting? Would they not schedule another meeting? Frick and frack is a term that is used commonly between the communication and the back and forth between brokers and brands. I personally prefer texts or emails. Yes. Because because I use that as my reference. So, which I can't do so well if it's a phone call or a voicemail message. I do like to chronicle the frick and frack because I use that in my preparation for my next call with the candidate.
Very good.
So
we have a template that we use for communication that's spot on, right? So I think it's better to have email than a dialogue, just from a time perspective, because Leslie's time is valuable. So is the recruiter's time, right? If you're going to send an email or a text, it's what happened. When did it happen? When was your last call? What did you talk about? High level it. How did you leave it? So what are the next steps? Okay. When are you talking again? Okay. And then from a broker's perspective, how can the broker add value in the next conversation? So I might say, hey, Leslie, it looks like they have a concern about X, Y, Z, and it's still hanging out there as a concern. Can you address it in your next call?
Yep.
Okay. So it's like, what value add can the broker bring to the table? So those 4 or 5 elements should be in every communication. Okay.
And this is also, some franchisors are horrible at this. And where I hear nothing. It's like if I have to chase for a territory check, if I have to chase for feedback, they're probably not going to get much action from me on an ongoing basis.
So communicate with the franchise consultant or brokers, like a territory checks same day, always within 24 hours. Often the territory checks come in. Here's where the brokers that screw us, right? So I'm going to show the concept in 2 hours. Is the territory available? So you want to have some admin available, a franchise broker, because you're going to have to answer those immediately when they come in, because there's always time pressure from the broker side of the equation. And then as it relates to when the lead's in process, same day, right? So before I get on the next call, that email's going out with the recap, right? And then we're taking good notes and putting them in the CRM.
Yeah.
And then some even FSOs have their own CRMs that the brokers have access to, that they can see the notes. Thank you.
I'd add to the territory checks, add a map, please.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
'Cause
easy.
wide open.
That's easy to interpret.
Yeah, exactly. Red is closed, green is open.
And yellow is call me. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. The other thing is pay, right? Pay on time, pay when the check comes in, get the check out within 24 hours. Don't do look, I'm an FSO, and then I own a digital agency. You guys, do the net 30 on me all the time. I get it. No complaints here. We always get paid. You can't wait 30 days for a franchise broker. Get that check out like the next day the check comes in, and overnight it, or wiring instructions. Get it in their hands. That's another way to get their attention. And Leslie, I'm sure you agree with that. You guys want to get paid on time?
I mean, we want to, yes. I mean, our contract is within 10 days and most of our brands pay us within a day.
Yeah. I will tell you, if the brands we represent, if they don't pay them within a couple of days, I get the call and say, what's the matter with you guys? How come we're not getting paid on time? Okay. So that is an important consideration. Carl, any feedback on that?
The faster you pay, the more leads you get. It's just that simple.
There is a
If I gotta
correlation.
chase you, if I gotta chase you, we'll just cut you off. I mean, it's just not worth our effort. There's plenty of other people who want to pay us. That's really what I think it comes down to. You want to do the deals, you want to pay us. And if that comes across to the brokers, they're going to do business with you. Neighborly is a great example. They have resented us from day one, and it still permeates the organization. And I don't do deals with them unless I have to.
Well, it sounds like they're not being neighborly.
They're not being very neighborly. You would agree, Leslie?
Yeah, they're very, very difficult to work with.
Okay. But the purpose today, we're not going to whip franchisors under the bus. So
Come on.
say we were not. Leslie made me edit some franchisor broker content earlier in this conversation, so we agreed we'll keep it on the up. Okay. Leslie, why don't you talk about some of the other things like events and sponsorships and other things that franchisors probably need to do to get on the short list or get introduced to the brand?
Yeah, most broker networks have, regular meetings, conferences. It's important to go to them and to show up and be there and participate. This stuff costs money. We know that. We appreciate that. Again, it says reach out to top individual producers, but it's what you're reaching out to me with. Like, give me something to earn the phone call. And right. I don't mean to be, I hate to sound snooty about that, but I think what brands just don't get is, I am bombarded by these phone calls and emails. Like, so you have to, give me something that shows what's going to happen if I send you leads. It's
yes.
the franchisee videos that I suggested, earlier. Nobody wants more email, but if it's the kind of information that I want in email, then send it to me. And your prior slide talked about deal announcements, and I love deal announcements. Like but I only love them if you're telling me who the candidate is, their background, what their prior corporate life looked like. That is a lot more meaningful to me because I get a sense of who's buying your franchise, like who's attracted to your brand. That is much better than an email that says we just sold 3 territories in Dallas, Texas. Like, I don't care. You know,
And then
So-
talk about the shelf life, because that's where I have this slide. Yes.
I mean, I mean, I said it earlier. We're all, you know, we're victims to the shiny new toy. And you know, we'll have I mean, the reality is, you know, I say that, but then there's brands that we've worked with for 30 years.
Yes.
We have worked with Sign World for 30 plus years and consistently continue to do deals with them. And so there's always going to be some, you know, tried and true that we're going to work with for years and years and years. But I would say that is not most of our brands, you
Yes.
know. So most will have a solid, you know, our you know, who is on the leaderboard of brands that we work with, it changes.
Yes. And yeah, going back to shelf life, you know, that's one of the reasons I got into digital and started a digital agency, especially in lead gen, is that reason, right? So, you know, you can build a flywheel with the broker community, but you don't have control over that lead, right? They're 100% in control of their own inventory. And we used to find that you can run your choke out within the broker community within 2 to 3 years. And then if you don't have other sources of leads, then you've really shot the franchisor in the head, right? So because all of a sudden their deal flow dries up, which is horrible for enterprise value, right? So, you know, I think part of when we're looking at deal flow and these, you do multiple channels because that's what the private equity firms want, right? So the more diversity you have in deal flow, okay, the less risk they see when they're evaluating your business, which means the higher valuation they can put on it, right? So it does eliminate your risk. So I do recommend when you work with brokers, don't do it by eliminating the other channels. Make it inclusive. And then Leslie, can you talk a little bit about some of the FTC stuff that's going on? Can you talk intelligently about that?
You know, somewhat. I mean, this has been going on for years, but it does seem like there's going to be, you know, there and Franet kind of got ahead of this. We created a voluntary broker disclosure document that we send to all of our clients at the onset. At the same time, we're introducing our candidates to brands.
Very good. Okay.
We send them, and nobody reads it. I mean, absolutely nobody cares and nobody reads it, but it is a, you know, thing that our organization decided to do. So we're a little bit ahead of this, but yeah, brokers are going to be regulated.
Okay.
I mean, and there's no question.
And part of that, there's the conversation. I'll learn more about this and I'll get back to you with more feedback, but there's conversation that the fees we pay to brokers are going to need to be disclosed in the FDD.
And actually, it's what it really is third-party sellers, which
Yes, it's third-party sellers, right?
not just
So even
brokers.
FSOs, right.
Yeah.
That's right.
You know,
Okay.
one thing I would, can I just say one thing about the franchise? I'm hearing this more and more from my clients. The norm is doing your meetings on Zoom. And if the franchisor representative is not doing their meetings on Zoom, they are at a distinct competitive disadvantage, or Teams or Google Meets or whatever. Because I hear that from my clients. It's a negative when they're giving me feedback about the 3 or 4 brands, and they're like, well, this one, you know, they wouldn't do a Zoom call, they did a phone call. And I mean, it's not a positive perception. So
Perfect. So we'll open the floor to Q&A now. I know we've got 3 minutes, so they better be good questions.
I have a question for Leslie. Are you doing all your meetings on Zoom with your clients?
all of them.
Okay.
Good question, Carl. Short, pithy, concise, right to the point.
3 minutes.
Other questions? Well, this is a good jump off point. If we got no other questions. So first of all, Leslie, thank you much for distinguishing and esteeming us with your presence and your feedback and all the good content. I think if you follow Leslie's advice, you'll get more deals done and build your brand within the franchise broker community. And then we're going to extend an offer quite frankly, because we'd like to take on 1 or 2 more clients before year end. So we're going to offer a free audit to any franchisors that are considering a change in agency. So we'll look at your Google, we'll look at your Facebook, we'll look at your Instagram. We'll see what you're currently doing or your agency's currently doing. We'll identify areas of inefficiencies and then show the franchisor where, if we can, we'd improve and what you can expect from us, and then put in a proposal. So free audit of your advertising effectiveness. So that's our offer to you. And then your offer to the world is, don't forget to do your 1 act of kindness for all the wisdom that Leslie imparted. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. It was great talking to you. And we'll catch you in our next session, which is the 2nd Tuesday of July, whenever that is.
Have a
Thanks,
good
everybody.
Thanks, Leslie.
4th, everybody.